Yo, what's up guys? Bill here for Classic Rock and Metal Review. Time for a DVD review as promised. We're going to take a good long look at Black Sabbath's Long Island 1980 DVD. Just picked this up a month or two ago. Really cool, but we're going to go over the whole Black and Blue tour. We're going to talk some general info about it, how it came to be, and how band members on both sides, Cult and Sabbath, look back on that interesting tour. Learned a couple things I didn't realize about it, quite a few actually, especially involving the video itself, how it came to be, so forth. Guys, first of all, I'm going to start out with the usual. Got me a nice 4 different equilibriums the other day. We're going to go with Rock Fantasy. You know, they have no descriptions on these cans. And you know what? They're just always good, honestly. I don't even bother checking out any details on them. Double IPA, 7.5% alcohol. That's what about I can handle these days. Time for another probably botched live on air pour with the shameless plug glass once again. All right, here we go. See if I can get one right eventually. I'm liking the color. Definitely on the pale side. Almost a kind of dirty water texture to it. But, you know, that's usually good news in the world of IPAs. Almost the whole can in there. That's not bad. And, man, that's pretty damn good for me. If you guys watched any of these before, you know what I'm talking about. All right, let that settle just a minute. So, here's our video by the Shades label. Simply called, like I said, Long Island 1980. Nassau Coliseum, Long Island, New York, October 17th, 1980, the date that the entire Black and Blue concert film was filmed. So, I'll give you some background on the show, the tour itself. Then we'll talk picture and sound quality on this guy. Packaging, of course, at the end. Of course, we're going to go over the entire show itself, highlights and so forth, interesting little things I spotted. And there are a few older versions of this video out there, and actually an alternate version of this. If you wanted to get this on video, there's also a cheaper version out there. We'll talk about that at the end. So guys, 1 DVD-R is what you get from Shades on this guy. It says 64 minutes on this back cover. That can't be accurate. The Sabbath portion of this show is 47 minutes, 2 promo videos from Die Young and Neon Nights. And they're the full videos, but those videos were standard length, probably a little shorter, 4 minutes each. I'm going to estimate it's a 55-minute video. All right, so this was originally half Blue Oyster Cult, half Black Sabbath concert film. Released in 1981, filmed that date, October 17th of 80. So it was a co-headlining tour of sorts, and we'll get into what I mean by that in a minute. But which actually made sense on a lot of levels, at least on paper. Black Sabbath, still on the comeback trail. We're only 5 months after Heaven and Hell's released. It's doing really well. No argument there. But they still do have a new singer trying to get him over on the United States. Blue Oyster Cult in 1979 released Mirrors. First time they used a different producer. I think it was Tom Werman. Drove them in a little bit more commercial direction. It wasn't really a success for them at all. No really hits off of Mirrors. That was 79. So earlier in the year, they used Martin Birch. Right after he was done producing Heaven and Hell for Sabbath, he produces Cultosaurus Erectus, their June 1980 album. So both of these bands, new releases in spring of 1980, spring, summer, back to back, same producer. Also shared Sandy Pearlman as a manager, managed both bands at the time. And, you know, probably had more of a stake in Blue Oyster Cult, having been their only manager since they existed. Sabbath, of course, just started using Sandy, I think in the last year or two, pretty recently. What better way to get your edge back if you're Blue Oyster Cult after releasing a popular commercial album in 79, going heavier in 80, than to go touring with a heavy act like Black Sabbath. Just, you know, hindsight on my part there. But that part makes sense. Now, as far as the tour, overall, one of the highest grossing tours. Every week it was listed. It was up in the top 3 for the most part. Bands would be alternating who was the headliner. Now, both bands had their own headlining tours going on, while this tour was going on. So they would only meet up for certain dates in between. They were each playing their own headlining shows. So you could see how this would be a little bit of a conflict when it came to doing a show together. Of course, having the alternating headliners, one way to sort of appease everybody. Along the way, you do have a couple of major things happen. You have Bill Ward leave the band in August, have to be replaced. Also, now about 8 days earlier, October 9th, 1980, the Milwaukee riot that happens at a Blue Oyster called Black Sabbath show. Infamous, but it looks like that was due to, in part at least, there was a 1-hour changeover between bands. In this case, this was kind of a regular occurrence, but Black Sabbath's version is that that's what helped fuel the riot. Of course, it was a bottle getting thrown at Geezer, but people were just pissed off standing around for an hour, even more sometimes, waiting for the final act to come on stage. By the way, Geezer, I just noticed in his book, doesn't really chalk it up to someone trying to hit him. He said it was just way too dark for someone to aim that accurately in the dark. Who knows? Really hard to tell. But, all right, so that's the build up to roughly to October 17th. We're at the Nassau Coliseum, like I said. Pro shot, obviously, for film, but actually the initial reason this was filmed, to be on Don Kirshner's rock concert. Pretty interesting. I mean, I always knew Sabbath played on Don Kirshner's rock concert in December of 80. I think when I first saw that, it was at this record shop near me called Record Castle up in Philly. They had a lot of bootleg stuff. He had a catalog filled with bootleg video, and you would have to tell him what you wanted and come back a few weeks later, he'd have it ready. And I saw the Sabbath 80. I never got it, but it kind of stuck around in my head. Later on, I learned it was just portions of the Black and Blue concert aired on Don Kirshner's. However, initially, it was only filmed to be on Don Kirshner. At least that's what one report I read suggests. The idea for a concert film came later on. What to do with this extra footage? Let's just throw it all together and get it out in the theaters. So that's possibly what happened. I can't swear to it, but that's what I've read. So pretty interesting. So it got into theaters in 1981. There was an original run of screenings. After that, the midnight movie circuit. And at some point, I think actually in summer of 81, MTV starts the whole need for screening concert movies at the theater. Not quite the demand there was. So there's something cool I almost forgot about, those midnight screenings, really. Now, as far as home videos, Polygram released a VHS first in the UK. PAL format, early 80s. I can't pinpoint the date, but I actually used to have this copy here that looks like the original. PAL, PAL format, Spectrum Video, Polygram VHS, but like I said, PAL format. Warner Brothers released a VHS around the same time, early 80s, and also on Betamax. Now, Laserdisc, the first Laserdisc of this show came along on Polygram Records in the UK, 1984. Warner Brothers distributed a Laserdisc in the US shortly thereafter. Now, there actually was a DVD released of this show. In 2002, Castle Pictures announced the release, and it ended up being postponed several times and then finally canceled. In 2004, Universal Video announced the release also. I kind of remember this. They canceled it at the last minute, but not before some copies made it to certain European vendors for sale. Pulled due to licensing issues, quote unquote. Now that's where we get this Shades DVD. That's your source for this guy. The official DVD that ended up getting pulled before it was sold, but copies made it to the stores to be sold. So obviously a few people, lucky people, got their official copy of that. So Castle, their version, Castle Pictures, they're saying it's Sabbath, mostly Iommi, that have continued to block the release. Joe Bouchard, bassist for Blue Oyster Cult, he says the same exact thing. Buck Dharma of Cult also shares the same sort of idea of why it's being blocked. 2013, he was on that metal show saying it was Sabbath and Iommi. Eric Bloom of Blue Oyster Cult says that it's really not even that good. No post-production really to speak of. Possibly if that was done, but since it wasn't done, he doesn't really care about it being released the way it is. I'll have to say, you know what? The version we got here, I'll agree. No real post-production, and that's not always bad. You know, who's to say what kind of crap they would put in there if they were trying to make it sound better? We all know how that goes on live albums. Why touch up a live video? Just leave it how it is. I mean, it could always look better, sound better, I suppose. But I would just argue that for whatever it lacks in the way of quality post-production, it probably makes up for by being an authentic live experience of the band. Classic lineup: Ronnie James Dio, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler. Got Vinny Appice on drums. He'd only been there 6 weeks at the time. And you do have Jeff Nichols on keyboards. Somewhere on stage, he's not shown on the video at all. So let's get to some just general info about the tour. I already mentioned how both bands were playing their own headlining dates within the time frame of that tour. So just for example, Black Sabbath played 29 of their own headlining shows within the time frame of the Black and Blue tour. Specifically Ventura, California, July 23rd, ending on October 25th in Cincinnati. Ward's show, by the way, his last show, August 19th, Bloomington, Minnesota. Vinny Appice's first show, August 31st, Honolulu, Hawaii. Some of the openers on that tour, I'm talking Black and Blues tour. Riot opened 3 shows, triple bill there. 1 each for Saxon, Molly Hatchet, Johnny Van Zant Band, and Sammy Hagar. So about, 7 of these shows, you got 3 bands. Geezer talking about the whole situation in hindsight. His thoughts are that Sandy Pearlman basically was used in Sabbath to promote Blue Oyster Cult. Pearlman having been, like I mentioned earlier, Cult's only manager ever, fairly new manager with Sabbath. He also feels or thought that Cult enjoyed getting under the skin of Sabbath. They refused to share stage rigs, which meant the transition between Cult and Sabbath took over an hour. Fans would be spent or tired trying to watch Sabbath, or would even leave. One show didn't start till 1 a.m. And what really pissed them off at one point, Blue Oyster Cult decided to play Iron Man when they were opening for Sabbath. Geezer says, I can't believe Tony didn't kill them at that point. Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult. His defense is that Blue Oyster Cult was also pretty big at the time, and that they headlined the same arena a year later by themselves with, I think, 1 opening act, and sold it out. He also recalls Sabbath being upset at Pearlman for the tour in general. But he denies antagonizing Sabbath, saying that they had been huge fans since the first album, which that much is definitely true. I've known that for a long time. Headlining the same arena a year later, I'm not sure that's a really good defense. Cult was still kind of on the downswing in a way. They'd be able to sell that arena out a year later because they had released Fire of an Origin, another huge hit, and Burning for You. There's the history and a little bit of build up to the show. Just quickly, I'll tell you my versions. The ones that I still own, actually, before I bought this, obviously. My own VHS to DVD-R copy from that UK Polygram, PAL format, believe it or not, transferred on my regular American VCR. It's not like those things don't play. They just probably don't play perfect. It's still a good or very good picture and sound. I put it on this morning just to see. It is a little fuzzy, but it's not bad at all. I also have a trade copy of Black and No Blue, it was called, which you can find out there. Which, when I first heard of that idea, I thought it was really stupid, breaking up a 2-band movie. However, I really came around on that, especially because I don't think the Blue Oyster Cult portion is all that great. They definitely have better videos out there. That trade copy, Black and No Blue, really average quality. I'm only keeping that DVD around for the Hammersmith 82 show that's attached to it. But on to our shades. Catalog number 1409, Long Island 1980 DVD. Got this, guys. I got this from a private source. We'll get to all that on the next bootleg episode, how to find some private sources. All right, get to it later. 12 pounds, British pounds for me. And so what, 18 bucks cash, 17. I also noticed RZ has this right now. head on over after this show and get it. Or go right now. What do I care? But let's get to the picture quality, sound quality. The picture's in the usual 4:3 ratio. Whenever these old things are transferred, they almost generally stick to the same old format as far as the picture shape. Very good, excellent picture. It can vary depending on the camera angle, and there are many camera angles. I would say mostly you're in the 8.5 to 9 range. Actually, most of it's in the 9 range. Really sharp and clear. Obviously, coming from an officially released DVD, it got cleaned up. So it's as good as it's probably going to be. Nice and clear, like I said. Some of the picture can be in that like 7.5 range, usually just for a few seconds here and there. Just different cameras, just I guess, didn't record as well as others. It's a little hard to describe it. I've seen it before with bootleg videos. Overall, though, I'd have to say picture, probably a solid 8.5, maybe a 9. Definitely the best version I've owned. Third version. This is the 4th version I've owned altogether. Now, there are some drifting horizontal lines, that you can kind of make out as you're watching. They slowly drift up the screen. I'm not counting that as part of the degraded quality because they're kind of tough to see. They're there for sure, but they're not really that annoying. Most of the time they're not there. So when they are there, even when they are there, the picture's pretty good. Solid 8.5 picture-wise, maybe a 9. The sound, obviously professionally recorded. Soundboard, I would say, it sounds like it's in stereo. It's not listed on here what the sound is. Sounds stereo to me. Even the VHSs from the early 80s were stereo. Can't imagine this not being. Sounds it to me. Lacking your modern sort of dynamics and, finishing touches that can be put on things these days. A remix would be great, but the sound, more than acceptable. Let's get to the show itself. Damn, that's good. Going right out on the deck after this show. Finishing that bitch. Originally, the film opened up with Oyster playing the Marshall Plan, and it wasn't even from the concert. It was actually like a promo video kind of thing. Don Kirshner's in the song, if you know the song, so he makes an appearance in the promo video too. So, whole big sort of, Sandy Pearlman, Oyster Cult, Black Sabbath, Don Kirshner circle of life for this presentation here. Long Island 1980 instead opens up with Sabbath doing War Pigs. The black and blue title, War Pigs, is a solid version, as good as anything you've ever heard before. Dio's probably the loudest of the band members, but everything's heard nice and clearly here. Even Geezer sounds good and clear. 6-week-in drummer Vinny Appice sounds tight. Him and his little boy haircut. I've never seen the dude's hair shorter. He sounds really good. Now, I've read somewhere a couple people really don't care for this tour until Vinny's in the band because they feel like Ward was just running on a little bit of cruise control, if you want to call it that. Geezer kind of defends Ward leaving the band in a way as far as his playing. He feels like no matter what issues were going on with any of the guys, it never affected any of their playing on stage. I got to be honest, I'm probably somewhere in between. I don't think Bill drumming on this tour sounded bad at all. However, a couple of occasional little mistimed things. And Vinny, definitely a steadier drummer. Probably also gave them a little kick in the ass in that way. Coolest thing in War Pigs, I noticed on the video, after they come out of the solo, Iommi's pounding on that chord before we go back into the drum and vocal section. Slams the chord, throws up the horns, does it again, 2 times in a row. You get to see Iommi flashing the horns while he's playing. That, I don't know how many times I've ever seen that. Not much. You get to see it twice within 5 seconds here. That was pretty cool. It's a really good version. Neon Nights, another Heaven and Hell, early era, live performance. Got to reiterate this. I don't even think I've said it before. Only 1980 Pro footage out there is this video. Kind of makes it a no-brainer, right? We get a microphone fail when Dio goes to sing this song, which is kind of funny because he ends up walking back past Geezer Butler and just flings the mic over his head. And Geezer gets a good laugh out of that. He goes and retrieves another mic from the side of the stage. Pretty cool. The crowd approved. Crowd's really into this one, It's good to see Heaven and Hell album getting love fairly early on, NIB's next. I always liked Dio's version. It sounds as good with him as it does with Ozzy to me. Of course you love Ozzy's version. But this one, you know, I'm warming up to Dio doing Ozzy songs lately, last few years. But this is one I always thought he sounded good on. Probably the first one I ever thought he sounded good on that I heard. You only get the short Geezer Butler intro on NIB though. The original film had Iron Man next, but here on this the Shades DVD, you get the running order of the set list restored in the order that it was played that night. That's kind of a nice, you know, this is one of those nice little things that the bootleg labels pay attention to. All right, we're not amateurs here. You know, this is the kind of stuff, at least I prefer. Heaven and Hell is what we get next, and it's another great version because they're all great from what I've heard. And also another, if only slightly, different version. Tony's solo really drenched in echo. Now I've heard it that way before. It just feels like this one he might be using a little more reverb, a little longer than some of the other versions I've heard, at least. Little call and response situation with the crowd, little competition between the left and the right kind of thing. You know, emceed by Dio, obviously. Another great Heaven and Hell. Now on to Iron Man, which would have been before Heaven and Hell on the film, but at the show, it was Iron Man. You only get the first two verses, and then we're stuck with the original film edit, which chopped the song. It goes directly from the end of the second verse right into Tony's guitar solo, but I mean not the solo to Iron Man, the solo where Tony's by himself on stage. What the coolest part about it, you get the full orchid. Of course it's being done on electric, and it's kind of a distorted electric, but he plays the whole 1.5 minute orchid, probably about a 4-minute solo altogether. Really cool stuff. Die Young, the film had this last, so now it's back next to last like it should be. Another one that's back in its order. Another solid version. Then we get the final number, Paranoid, with the Heaven and Hell reprise. Cool stuff here. Went down on Long Island, Nassau Coliseum. October 17th of 80. Guys, it's a no-brainer. You gotta have it, right? This is the only pro footage of this era recorded live. Other than, of course, in 82, the Live Evil film, never released. I think there's 13 minutes of edited clips from that concert. I think it's Dallas that's out there. That's it. You know, even on the bootleg market, nothing from Live Evil. So here we go. You need it. How are you going to get it? Also, let me mention some bonus tracks. You got the promos for Die Young and Neon Nights. Good solid choices for bonuses there. They're both sourced from VH1 Classic airings that happened around the Dio Years era, which I think is 2006. Both really good quality. Both of those videos probably just as much a thing of source limitation. The original videos didn't look great, as there is maybe a little generational loss also, but they still look really good. Ward has a unique look during those videos. He's got curly hair and a beard kind of coming in, not a full beard. And that's kind of interesting look, and you get to see he walks to the front of the stage at the end of Neon Nights. I love how they edit in the Sabbath chant, Sabbath, Sabbath, at the end of the Neon Nights video. Obviously edited in, but that really sounds cool. I think they did that at the end of one of the live single B-sides earlier in the year. Same Sabbath chant, it sounds like, at the end of Neon Nights. Final word, obviously a must-have, the only pro shot footage of the band that's out there. It's from 1980. The band is on record saying that they're not in favor of this ever being released. So, you know, this is pretty much what we got to get. So, go get it. Now, how are you going to find it? Search the title, all right? Search Black Sabbath. This is how you find any bootleg. Search the exact title. Black Sabbath, Long Island 1980, DVD. If you want this one in particular, put the word Shades. All right, that's the label. That's how you'll find your way to this one. RZ will probably pop up first. That's not where I got this, but I was just on their site this morning. They have it in this full-on DVD size case, old school case. It's $25 cash. They had been selling a, I would call it a jewel case CDR version. $10, $7. It's sold out. So Hell with that piece of shit. Go get this. You know? Gotta get it, man. Come on. Now, I got mine off a private seller, which on the next bootleg show, coming up pretty soon, I'll go over how to find some of these private sellers. All right? So stay tuned. Guys, that's going to do it for now. Sabbath, Long Island, black and blue foam. Go get it, man. That's all I can tell you. And cheers, and everyone have a great friggin' day.